Good. From the media team, please, let's have some order now. Good, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, and all, again, protocols observed. We were trying to see how many people have come back, how many delegates, so that we have a quorum, but every minute now ticking, we are losing time. In the morning, we had lost an hour. I think now we are maybe 1.5. And since we have to meet the objective of the day, I think we will have to continue. I was not told to apologize because of this tea issue, but I think it's good to tell you that there was a small hitch. I saw it, that people queued and they did not get the tea. That is not very good, but somehow we move on, isn't it? I can promise you the information I got is that there's now lunch. Yeah, there's hope for lunch. But they'll give you, we shall get a voucher. Now trying to sort how the voucher will be given so that we get the order. We are many, and then the lunch is 1:30. That's at least I've been told. So what we'll do is now I hand over the mic to Jane. Jane is a key person here. She's a moderator of the group dealing with sustainability in agriculture, and she will manage the group. I think, Jane, we had initially 1 hour. Now we may have to compress it so that you help us to redeem time. So please pay attention now to this discussion. There will be a question and answer later on, so it's good that you take up your notes, and then we shall have a small session on understanding or clarifying issues. Jen, now the floor is yours, please. Or you can use yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My panel is talking about sustainability. My name is Jen Musindi. I chair Technical Advisory Committee at ASNET. That committee is basically made up of the think tank within ASNET, and we have academia and technical people who dissect matters agriculture before we move it on to the board. With me, I have 4 panelists, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves and answer the question, what is sustainability in agriculture to you? We'll start with Emmanuel.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Emmanuel Atamba, and thank you first for the organizers for the invitation to be here. I work with TMG Research, and in the whole discussion about food systems, we are asking ourselves how to govern the transformation of food systems. That's where we are coming from. To me, sustainability means a lot of things, but I think I will highlight just one because I know the panelists will also highlight other things. To me, sustainability means that we are able to take care of the resources that we use for production, but also not only that, but if you are looking at it from a point of governance and coordination, is that we are also using the resources that we have available as actors, and here I'm talking about how we coordinate as actors to sustainably transform our food system. So sustainability, not only in agriculture, in the technical aspects of things, or how we conserve resources, and how we make sure that farmer livelihoods are sustainable, but also sustainability in how we lead and govern the agriculture sector. I look at sustainability in those 2 aspects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Jagi. I'm a researcher affiliated with Tegemea University, now at Africa Agricultural Network of Policy Research Institutes. And to the topic on sustainability, I think I would want to use my background, which is I'm trained as an economist, to look at it in terms of being able to profitably exploit resources. And I think when it comes to agriculture, land is one of the key resources. But beyond just looking at how we use it in an environmental way, it has to make sense in a profit sense for farmers. Otherwise, as farmers, and the good thing is that most of us here have a private sector leaning, we do not have any incentive to continue into a production that we are not making money. So the key thing here in terms of sustainability would be to how do we obtain that balance between optimally utilizing the resources, the natural resources, to ensure that we remain in production and that production remains profitable. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Purity Njue. I am the Group Sustainability Manager for the VP Group. The VP Group is a grower and exporter of flowers, vegetables, and fruits, which include avocado, mango, and that we also work with smallholder farmers who are growing beans and peas. So the VP group employs about 10,000 people, and I think that's where I'll start. What sustainability means to me is those people are still there tomorrow. Those 5,000 farmers, they are still farming. Because I knew my colleagues will say most of the things about sustainability, and I'm a Christian, I'll go to the Bible. It is said, till the land. By the time man was tilling the land, he was not told to remove anything there. So it's about preserving. So as we do agriculture, for me, it's every species is going to still be there tomorrow. Every human being is still going to survive tomorrow. Renewable resources are still going to be there. The non-renewable resources, the others who come after us will actually find them. So for me, it is about the future, tomorrow. How do we preserve that which was given to us and make sure that we are passing it on to the ones who will come after us? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Peter Gekonyo. I'm the chairman, Kenya Coffee Producers Association. And basically, being a farmer, I would want to look at the sustainability from a perspective of a farmer. We do farming basically because we would want to make maximum profit. And we would also not only want to make maximum profit, but we would want to look at the profit for today and tomorrow. And for us to be able to achieve that, we must ensure that the resources that we are using, we are taking care of. And here I'm looking at the entire ecosystem, including human resource. We need to look at, when we are looking at the human resource, are we taking care of the human resources that we have? When you look at the natural resources that we are using maybe for production, are we taking care of, for example, for us when we are doing agriculture, and especially in coffee, are we able to maintain and to preserve our soil? What chemicals are we using? Are we affecting the ecosystem? Are we affecting the livelihood of those other maybe insects that are also helpful to the agriculture that we are doing? And also, we are looking at how are we conserving the environment, because if the environment is angry with us, then we can always be able to tell that it's also going to destroy what we are doing. So from a holistic perspective, I'm looking at sustainability from a perspective that what we are doing today, we would want to do it tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, but ensuring that the resources that we are using will also be there for our own livelihood today and tomorrow and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. As you can see, I have a very knowledgeable panel, so we'll just dive right into it. One of the areas we need to look at within sustainability is making fundamental changes to the way food is produced, distributed, and consumed. I'd like Peter, since you have the mic, to speak about how we can make our value chains more efficient so that we can, as we said, leave something for the future generations. Thanks.
Thank you. When I look at the issue of value chain, I'm looking at the issue of value chain from a perspective of how are we able to use those resources, or how are we well able to integrate the resources to be able to get the maximum productivity from the same when we are actually using the least or the lowest cost. So for us to be able to make, to have a very efficient value chain, I am looking at how well are we able to integrate. Sometimes you look at, for example, in our area of coffee, you look at the resources that we are using, but are we able to use those resources maybe to generate more better and value-added byproducts from what we are currently using? On other areas, when we're also doing, for example, issues to do with the transportation, how well are we able to use the transport systems? Are we integrated such that when something is being delivered, the transport system can still be able to come back with something else for the purposes of the producers? I'm also looking at when we are using the resources that we are, for example, are available to us. how well are they coordinated? So that at the end of the day, we'll get maximum benefit from the use of resources. And again, we have various value chain players. Are we interacting? Are we coordinated in such that when I'm doing something, maybe a farmer is producing, is the market aware of what I'm producing, and is the market, is the farmer who is producing aware of what the market is expecting, and how are we interlinked? Or rather, how are we interlinked? At the end of the day, we are looking at the consumer, we are looking at the producer, and the people who are, or the service providers that are within the value chain. And there are many. And therefore, during that particular process, we must make sure that because there are some resources that are not renewable, and some of the natural resources, once they are gone, and they will be gone forever, we must make sure that we get the maximum out of what we have. The other issue is, for example, when we have, like in the coffee, is very seasonal. We have two main seasons, the early season and the late season, or what we call the main crop. During the entire period, you find sometimes there is idle capacity. We have maybe the staffing that are there. What else can they be doing when they are not really maybe working on the issues to do with the coffee? Are there anything else that they can be able to do with the coffee within the value chain that can be able to generate more resources, so that we do not have idle time with the labor? Again, are we also taking care of the same labor, so that then we have fewer interruptions? And here I'm looking at, are we taking care of human resources? Because when you have a human resource that is not participating fully, it therefore means you'll continue paying and not reaping the maximum benefit of the same. So it is a whole, I would want to look at it as an ecosystem that we depend and rely on each other at different levels. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Let's not waste our resources, basically. We use them properly. Now, efficiency brings in points of wastage within the system, and especially now we've been talking about food waste. So I'd like Purity to tell us something about a efficiently circular system, and how you can, as a company, you implement these requirements of circularity, and how others can also plug in to efficient systems through waste management.
Yeah, thank you. Most of the waste we look at in VegPro will come from food. Of course, there is on the aspect of flowers, and there is the green waste from the flowers. But when I talk of food, especially food waste, is one of the areas that we make sure after all that has gone into production, we are not going to have any wastage. So before I talk about energy, I think even from the utilization of the food, our advantage as VegPro is the ability over time to be able to have a prepared factory, which is high care, that the different lines that we have for selling our product is not just, I had beans, this was a good bean, this was not too straight. I think it is making sure that even that not too straight bean was able to get to the market, because it's a good quality, good to eat food. It just happened to be 1 centimeter shorter. So we do have stir fries, we do have mixed packs, where we are able to utilize most of the food that we are having to reduce the waste. So I think that has really been helpful in terms of when you have excess production, or when you have maybe orders that are coming in and you have to compete. We were talking about competition in the morning, being competitive. So it is how well are you able to also brand, how well are you able to package. Most of the food we eat, we start by seeing how does it look. So some of those stir fries, they look appealing even when they go out there. So it's that value add in terms of also utilizing every piece of food that you have in the pack house. So other than that, I think any other waste that we generate, we are recycling. If we are talking of also in the growing systems, we see 100% of our flowers we grow on hydroponics. So we are able to have recycling of that fertilizer, recycling of water, and we are reducing the use of that resource. In terms of energy, We have AD plant, which is an aerobic digestion plant in Naivasha, and any now eventual waste you've got because you peeled something, you stripped your baby corn, you have even the crop remains on the ground, all that is shredded into an AD plant. So it is in Naivasha, in one of our farms called Gorge Farm. Just a bit of highlights. It is actually the first and largest grid-connected biogas power plant in the country, I think in East Africa as well. So any energy that we produce from it, let's say at night, that we are not using because we don't store, is sold to the grid. So we make sure that all the waste we have in all our pack houses, most of our operations we pack at source, so we are able to reduce that transportation also of waste. You've come with the produce from Naivasha to come and strip it in Nairobi and then return that waste back. So we have been able to have pack houses at source. So we do some packing in Nairobi, yes, but most of that will have been processed, and most of the work has been done. If it is onions, it's been stripped and all. So that goes to that AD plant. It is a 2 megawatt plant. So the energy we produce is able to power all the farms that are within that South Lake region, which is 5 farms and the pack houses. So we use our own waste to generate our own electricity. I know in Kenya already the energy is green, but I think going that extra step to make sure that that waste that you are generating also goes to generate energy. It is also producing for us the biofertilizer we were talking about. So in terms of solid fertilizer, we have been able to get maybe an average of about 1.5 tons of fertilizer we get from there, and 6,000 liters of liquid fertilizer annually. So all this goes back into the vegetable production. We have avocado orchards as well. Most of this liquid will be taken to the avocado orchard. So it means that you are able to reduce the fertilizer that you would have used. So you use the biofertilizer. At the plant, we also have a lab, and it is a pioneer research lab for biogas and biomass for energy technology. So we do have a lab that is constantly doing some of this kind of research that we are talking about in the morning. In terms of also carbon emission savings, because it's again also part of our strategy of reducing our carbon emissions. So we are able to save at least about 800 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year with that plant. So it was established in 2016. So since then, I think we have had savings of over 6,000 tons. That would be roughly almost like planting 80,000 trees for 10 years. So we may not have the land to go and plant the trees, but we are able to save this equivalent saving of carbon. So I think because we also do a lot with farmers, we said we have almost 5,000 farmers across the country, whether it's avocado, it's mango, it's beans, peas, and all that. We are able again to take this kind of mindset, this kind of technology of saying, let's have a circular economy, let's look at the waste that you're having, encouraging the farmers in terms of biogas, using their waste, encouraging them in terms of composting, because any waste that does not go to the AD plant, let's say the woody rose waste after uprooting, we still do a lot of composting. On top of that composting, we are also doing vermicomposting. So we use the worms to generate the tea that we feed to the plants. So it's a technology we have been able to take to farmers. We have a project in Trans Nzoia, Elgeyo Marakwet, and that side that we are doing. I think I was very privileged to attend the course that was offered by ASNET in terms of ESG and rolling that out, the due diligence process, bringing in farmers in matters of ESG and looking at not just what are the emerging regulations that they have to abide by or standards they have to meet, but also how that benefits them. So the training of trainers is to make sure that some of this knowledge, some of these technologies is reaching even the smallest farmer. They are able to see this makes sense. When I take from this product, it goes to this product and it comes full circle. I'm now taking it back again as fertilizer. So that is the opportunity that I do have with the teams that I'm working with on the ground to roll out some of this knowledge, making sure that into the future people are looking more in terms of waste reduction and generating of renewable energy using biofertilizer, reducing reliance on inorganic fertilizer and such kind of technologies. Thank you.
Wow, that is really informative. You brought in an interesting topic of research and training. Team with Tegemeo Institute, I know you do a lot of research and you produce a lot of data. Could you take us through how your programs are supporting or have been supporting sustainability within the farming communities?
Thank you. So at the Institute, we usually see the public sector as we have traditionally seen the public sector as our major clients. So most of the time we used to think about research, we think about what the ministry wants, what county governments want. But we've had a bit of reorientation in the last couple of years because we've had a lot of research that is being driven by private sector demands. And this, we have instances where the private sector puts in, they want some questions answered, and we've been able to derive research or to design research products that are trying to answer some of these questions, including some of the things that Birute has said. For us, especially talking about policy, I would like to just highlight the challenge we've been facing and also the opportunity that we have, especially into trying to move research forward. So first, we acknowledge that when you think of public sector research, for us, it's like the Malabo Declaration. We keep saying we want 2% of our GDP to be set aside for public spending on agricultural research. I think since 2016, it's been a curve that has been going down. I think right now we are at about 0.06%. And if you look at the 0.6%, that is funds that are basically going to CALRO, which is a major one, a research institution, and then we also have other institutions such as ChemFree, that is, and then the marine forest research, the marine and fisheries research. So we do have instances and good examples where you've seen private sector funding research and it has worked. The best case study we have is on sorghum. Most of the sorghum research that we have in Kenya was actually funded by the private sector, the major institution being EABL. And they were able to fund for the development of varieties. They were able to fund for the extension, provision, and linkages to farmers with these varieties and being able for farmers being able to take up those varieties and know how to grow those varieties and created a market for it. So we see that as a major opportunity beyond just what we talk about public sector funding. The government, through partners such as AGRA, have been trying to think of how we can change, especially public sector funding in agriculture, but we still don't have a solution as yet. So one of the key things that we want to, again, reinforce that for us as Tegemeo, we've managed to benefit a lot from partnerships, not just with other research institutions, but also with the Ministry of Agriculture, the county governments and the private sector, including ASNET. And on the policy side, I think what I would want to emphasize is that we have to talk to the partnerships that can be created, especially when you think about the functions of each of the institutions. So for the national government, we know broadly their role has been to lead in terms of policy development and regulations. But if you look at the evidence that is being generating right now, we have a lot of challenges that includes the functions that the government plays. So if I can talk to what Dr. Vimal said in the morning, he was talking about irrigation being together with agriculture, and basically that's a functional relationship. And I think through the support of USAID program, we've done a function analysis that was kind of speaking to how can we efficiently organize government. We've had partners like GIZ who have supported policy training in a number of county governments, and the idea here was to train the staff of the county governments for them to be able to generate data and evidence that informs policy at that level. And the key thing, again, when it comes to all this, we do have a major problem with research uptake. I think I would say that considering what the institutions that are available in Kenya are doing, the major challenge we have right now is uptake of that research and using that research to inform policy. And we are also learning, I have to say that we are also alive that when it comes to policy, we have to take on board the political economic considerations. So the assumption that every policy will be informed by hard data and evidence does not necessarily fly. And the idea now would be to think of how do we integrate or try to make sure that the people who make decisions understand the opportunity cost of, for example, when we say that we want to fund 2% to add GDP for research, what are we giving up by not making that commitment? And here, for example, we can cite countries like Ethiopia, where we can actually see that the productivity growth in Ethiopia has been mainly driven by research and extension, whereby you have, I think Ethiopia has the highest extension to farmer ratio. They are able to have people who talk to farmers, tell farmers or provide advisories to farmers on what they need to plant, what inputs they need to use, and when to do that. So that even when you have unfavorable weather, like it's being predicted now, farmers already are aware of what they need to do. And that is also linked to the private sector, because remember that the private sector will be the ones providing inputs. So that the private sector also gets that knowledge of which markets do they target based on the products that they're producing. And importantly, again, this is almost just trying to repeat what Purity has said. For us to be able to uptake technologies, we must invest in our research and development. So all these technologies that we keep talking about, we have a lot of technologies in Kenya, produced in Kenya, but many of them cannot scale. So what we end up having is proof of concepts, which are many, but when it comes to scaling, it becomes a challenge because we are lacking that final bit where we can actually try to unpack it to see if we, for example, I think one of the things that I have been talked about recently, you've heard about green ammonia as fertilizer, but then what is the cost of that and how much does it take to get it to farmers? And how do we ensure that farmers understand that we have a new product and this is how we're going to utilize it to maintain the same level of productivity? So all that must seep back to the private sector, and the private sector basically, once that is provided, they able to utilize this information. And again, just echoing what the man says about data, that it's not at the cost of the farmers, but we need to see how do we disaggregate between what we can consider to be public goods driven and what is private goods. But we know that the challenge has always been that if research is funded as a private good, then you expect that the person funding that will want to hold on to it until they have recouped their investments. So that's why we are still advocating for more private sector, public sector funding for research. Thank you.
Thanks, Timmy. You're doing quite a bit. You've mentioned very many partners that you have. Emmanuel, we know you as very passionate about very many topics, but for now, we'd like you to speak about collaborative efforts to ensure that, again, we are here because of farmers. How do we make farmers be change makers within the sustainability environment? How do we assist them to look at sustainability as something they also need to embrace? Thanks.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks to all the discussions that have come out so far. I just wanted to highlight that I was somehow disappointed that we did not clap when we had that VegPro is producing 2 megawatts from biogas. I don't know how many of us understand what 2 megawatts means. I just finished setting up a 10 megawatts solar system for my farm, and when someone says 2 megawatts, I understand what that means. And these are some of the discussions that we have to bring to light, to start to engage, to say, how did you do it? How can we scale these ideas up? And I agree, Jen, that it's important that as we discuss these things, that it gets to really the most primary targets of players in the sector. And when you talk about agriculture, farmers are really at the center of it all. And as we all agree that we need to integrate sustainability in our agriculture and food systems, not only in this discussion, but in a lot of the discussions that we have been having. But I think the biggest question that we have not answered yet, and we don't get to answer every time we discuss about sustainability, is how. How do we integrate sustainability in a manner that lives up to the expectation of all actors, including the farmers that you have mentioned? Because farmers out there in the field, sometimes they don't care about the jargon that we bring them. Whether you tell them about agroecology, you tell them about organic, you tell them about regenerative, we tell them about zero tillage. All these things do not mean anything if they don't translate into actual benefits, as Dr. Njagia said, to farmers. What does it mean for them? Does it increase their productivity? Does it increase their competitiveness? Does it increase sustainability of their businesses? So how do we move to that level? And I think what we need is mechanisms to bring all the actors together, coordination mechanisms that are effective to bring actors together. And I think in the morning it was presented very passionately by the speakers in the morning, that if we do not have structures where we can dialogue, where we can coordinate ourselves as actors, where we can bring exchange experiences, where we can bring all the information that we have. For example, such success stories that we have had today about how to design value chain processes that are efficient, how to implement circular economy in a practical manner. What I would really recommend is that we have strong platforms, and I think platforms like this are important, and here I would like to congratulate ASNET and partners for bringing such a platform and sustaining it for now. This is the fourth summit. These platforms are key because they bring us together to exchange ideas, to exchange knowledge, and they bring us together also so that we start thinking towards a common vision. Because without a common vision as actors in the sector, then we do not have a compass. And there's no way we can integrate sustainability meaningfully. We will have very nice success stories here and there, and I'm sure even throughout this entire summit, and if we go to the exhibitions, there's a lot of success stories about how we can meaningfully integrate sustainability. But this cannot be an effective mechanism that brings us all together, that makes us to work towards a common vision. I know we disagree on some things. There has been already some things that people have brought in the morning, and I think there was already some disagreement you could sense when you think about the kind of discussions that are out there. But we need to have a common vision. Whether you are private sector, you are civil society, you are government, you are academia, we need to somehow try to bring all our expectations together and trying to see how can we prioritize, what are we prioritizing, and how can we work together towards a common vision. So in my analysis of the structures, I think we would benefit really to bring out a strong coordination mechanism. For example, as a more strengthened ATO, the Agriculture Transformation Office used to work very well. I don't know what happened now, but I think if such a structure can be upgraded to really address the needs of the actors, so that we have a very clear interface between actors, both in private sector, civil society, and including even donors or development partners, we have a mechanism that helps us to shape the coordination. For me, we have to start there. This is the only way that we can build a strong mechanism that helps us to really bring our small contributions, including the 2 megawatts and 5 megawatts someone else is building somewhere, into a big box where we can now say that we have actually transformed our sector into a more sustainable, more resilient agriculture sector that is more equitable, that produces more jobs and livelihoods, and also facilitates rural development. So that we are not missing any of these ideas out there because we simply don't have a structure that brings them on board. So I would really end there, but hope that we can start to also think about how we can sustainably govern our different interventions and businesses to ensure that each and every person in the room today and in this sector has something to offer. Can we give them a platform to bring what they have to offer? Thank you.
Wow, thank you. We've gotten a heavy introductory statement from every one of us, so I'll open to the floor if there are any questions to the panelists. You can put your hand up and the mic will come to you.
Okay, thank you very much, the presenters. It's really a good discussion. I'm Peter Mwagi from the Forum for Agriculture Advisory Services, Kenya. My question goes to Peter Getau on the issue of coffee. I know we are exporting a lot of coffee, and I think in the process we are mining a lot of nutrients from our soil. How do we try to recoup that soil back so that we don't take a lot of our nutrients to Europe and all that, and leaving our soils in a very vulnerable situation?
The way we can do it is pick a few, Jen, and then I see already one was coming from here. Then we can respond systematically. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think let me be on my feet. My name is Tom Wanambisi. I'm a colonel, retired, coffee farmer from Bungoma. I sit with Mr. Peter Kikonyo on KCPA, which really is an advocate and a lobbyist for coffee farmers in this country. Peter will attend to that question which my friend has asked, but mine was directed to my friend there who is covered quite well in matters of extension service. In this country, as we reflect back, there was quite effective extension service many years back, but in recent times, extension service diminished. It's no longer there. Now, when you talk about coffee, that to us in this country is a golden bird that lays the egg. Unfortunately, extension service is not there, and it's critical. I come from Bungoma, and in the house, I'm happy to say that I've seen one of our officials from the county government represented here. I think I'm connecting the two, that from where you sit as researchers and academia. In Bungoma, we have a university called Kibabi. It has also an agricultural extension into Sangalo. And there are other institutions which, of course, have come up. And we are looking at tapping into the youth. That is where our youth are. And we are hoping that some of us who are of age to get off the face of the earth, we wanted to bequeath this kind of discussion down to those youth that we want to bring up so that they feel it. My disappointment has been that connectivity between the research products and putting it where it belongs so that these young people can see agriculture, especially in coffee, in Bungoma. Bungoma is the fifth, one of the highest producers in this country on coffee. But there is very little that we see out there. Do you have connectivity with county governments such that this research, this extension service, these good practices that need to be put right where production is? Do you have that kind of connection? My question is long, but I think I'm very passionate about it. Thank you.
Can I have one more?
Thank you. I'm also Tom, but I'm Thomas, following the other Tom. I'm from AfriScope Research, and in these projects, we've been working with accelerating some of these SMEs. And one thing that Purity touched on, and I really appreciate when you talk about 2 megawatts, it's not an easy job to do. But energy we are still very energy deficient, and we want to put money in our farmers' pockets so that we can incentivize them to develop. Now, in your experience in generating these 2 megawatts, and you have your farmers as VegPro, you have your nucleus farms,
and you also have maybe outgrower farmers. Is it possible to transfer this technology so that the outgrower farmers can also generate their own energy at ground level? What that does is, on top of the money you pay them for the produce they bring to VegPro, it will also give them an extra incentive to work off. You know, when the crop is not done, they're still producing energy. And through your network of farmers, I believe you can connect so many farmers and join them into your feed-in tariff, the one you've negotiated with KPLC and the other people, to make farming more attractive. The second part was about that many farmers have a challenge with is financing. And I hope I'm not scooping from my colleagues' work that you're going to talk about financing later in the day. We find many of our financial institutions farming, either we don't package it well as something that can give them a return, or the other opportunities have a faster return, so they are more incentivized to giving money to the traders, to the other people, but not the primary producers. This is something I think we should actively lobby for. I think you mentioned bring the irrigation to Ministry of Agriculture. I think we need a finance desk and also an energy desk in Ministry of Agriculture so that it can include everybody in the whole mix. Because the moment we kill our small farmers, they are not finding a return on their work, we will be killing agriculture in this country. Thank you.
Thank you for that first round of questions. We'll allow Peter first, then Tim, then Purity.
Well, thank you for that specific question. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that why coffee is sweet is because of the nutrients that is able to get from the soil. And how it is also able to get the nutrients from the soil determines the quality. Coffees that are grown in areas where the climate is not very hot, we have a cool climate, they are bound to be sweeter because of the process of how nutrients are being picked from the soil and how they are being part and parcel of the formation of the bean. One of the greatest challenges that I would want to concur with the question is that we don't have any standard to quantify how much of the nutrient probably is within the specific beans. And therefore, the only intervention that we are probably having is to change the way we are able to produce the same coffee. For example, I would comment on the issues to do with the regenerative agriculture. We are more or less looking at how we can be able to naturally be able to produce coffee without necessarily draining the soils from all the nutrients. For example, if it is the cultivation, we can talk about zero tillage, where we don't disturb the soil. Maybe we do terracing because most of the coffees are growing in the hill areas. So we are able to do terracing to conserve the soil. And this can also be, well, it is done on regular basis, maybe on an annual basis, then that soil is able to retain the nutrients and the value that is required in the soil. The other one is when we are also doing the weeding, instead of doing the weeding using some of the chemicals, which again affect the soil and the environment, we are looking at how can we also be able to cut instead of, when we are doing the weeding, we can maybe do the weeding mechanically using maybe pangas or slashing the weeds, so that then again whatever is cut is retained in the same soil to conserve to reduce the exposure of the soil. So at the end of the day, despite the fact we may not know how much has been taken by those beans, but we can always be able to tell when you do a good that good practice, the kind of production that you get the next season will tell you whether a lot of nutrients actually got lost or you have been able to bring them back. And that way we can comfortably say that we are able to conserve the environment under which the coffee is grown, and also the sustainability of the same is assured. So I maybe not have been able to answer you very well, but from my own understanding as a farmer, That is the maximum that I would have been able to respond to. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much on the question on extension services, and especially the linkages between research and extension. And I totally agree with you. We have a broken system. The best example I would use is maize. Today, we have more than 400 registered varieties from KEFIS. If you were to do a farmer survey today and check the varieties that farmers are planting about 20 of the 400. So what happens to the 380 and where are they? And that tells you that the loop that is supposed to go from research to extension to farmers and then back to research is completely broken. And I believe universities and research institutions have a big opportunity to develop much meaningful relationships with county governments, especially to ensure that that loop is closed. We are, as a country, the ministry has already, I think it's already now revised and it's being enacted, the National Agricultural Extension Policy. And the policy kind of reorientates the service extension from a public-driven extension to a multi-sector, service extension system where we have different people providing different extension services. However, we have a challenge. We have a number of models that have been piloted. For example, the World Bank, through the program that they're funding, they are piloting a lot of disruptive agricultural technologies where you're using mobile phones to provide those services. I think you recently saw in Madaraka Day where the president launched the agripreneur model, which is also supposed to talk to that. But the consensus on what works is still out there. So we need to find, because, and I can give you another example, farmers are very different. So farmers in coffee, where they organize in a cooperative, farmers in dairy, where they organize in a cooperative, it is very easy to use that cooperative model to provide those services for them. And right now, we are seeing a lot of the extension services being loaded onto the cost of the cooperatives, where the cooperatives employs an extension worker to work with their farmers. But in other commodities, where farmers are not necessarily that organized, it becomes a different challenge. And we also know that while a farmer in dairy will happily pay, 2-3 shillings per liter to get that knowledge, a maize farmer may not necessarily do that, especially the smallholders. But we believe that from our interactions, there is no farmer who is averse to paying. Actually, once farmers understand the value of what they are getting, the premise that farmers are not willing to pay for extension services is not true. Farmers are actually willing to pay if you can actually show them the benefit of what they're paying for. Unfortunately, knowledge is not something that you see immediately. So some of the knowledge that you're getting, you will see the benefits further down the line. So, but I would say that we can do better in terms of strengthening those linkages. We can do better as a country in identifying models that can actually be scaled. And especially in the current system where we know that we'll have different service providers for different contexts, targeting different farmers. And even if you're targeting the same farmers, you can have a distinction between whether you're looking for a local market or an export market. So we have to take on board that dynamic and the dynamism within agricultural value chains to see what really works, but more importantly, what can be scaled to make sure that farmers don't lack in extension service provision. I think, Emmanuel, you had something to add on that as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think you have explained the technical part also, but I think what we also don't realize that we are losing without a strong extension mechanism is we are also losing spaces for discussion about policies with farmers. We are losing the touch between farmers and government, and you can see the kind of impacts of the breakdown now when we are discussing about the bills and everyone saying, it's punitive to farmers and all that. It's really that there is a mechanism that is missing in between, so that when we think about the value of extension services, we have to think beyond the technical knowledge transfer and start to look at it also as a really important structure for governance and coordination of the sector. If we see extension through that, then we will see why we need to invest in extension. We don't only invest in extension to bring adoption of technologies and different innovations, but we should see extension as a mechanism to strengthen the governance of our food systems.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of rolling out what we are doing, also knowledge transfer to farmers, obviously for Veg Pro, when we talk of 2 megawatts, we are also talking on, we are farming on 2,500 hectares of land on vegetables. We are looking at processing over 200 tons of produce every week. So that is the scale at which we are looking at to be able to produce these 2 megawatts. But again, the principles of ESG and all what we are looking at are the same, whether you are doing it on a large scale or small scale. So when I think I look at the farmer, in terms of empowerment, then it's twofold. There is the knowledge transfer itself and the technologies, but there's also the enabling in terms of funding. How do I be able to do this? So what VegPro is doing, we partner with our customers also. For example, there is a project we are going to be doing with farmers around Trans Nzoia in terms of climate adaptation and farming in a changing climate, where we are looking at what does the farmer need that energy for. I needed my 2 megawatts to not just irrigation, there is cold air, which is my most expensive product. I need to process in pack houses and all that. For the farmer, what we are hearing in the morning, their most urgent need at the moment is irrigation. And you find, I think to quote the president, I heard him use the word, we swung from floods to drought. So in a country that can have floods and go to droughts, I think being able to, one, harvest some of this water, enable farmers, whether you are talking of the surface water or you are talking of underground water where they have the aquifers, it's how do we enable this farmer to be able to even pump, even on the smallest scale, to have a solar pump. And that's a project that we are going to be doing with one of our customers, Sainsbury's, to maybe whatever funding you get, if you get 100,000 pounds, how does that translate into this farmer being able to pump this water? So how are they harvesting? Are they going to have dams, or are they going to have their collection ponds? Because there's a lot of runoff. Or are they going to have even just their own wells within their farms? How do you get then that water without having to pay for electricity or even use non-renewable energy like fossil fuels, diesel? We were told in the morning we have advantage of solar, we've got advantage of wind and all these other sources of energy. So especially with solar, we want to enable farmers sometimes to even come together in one area, see how we can harvest the water, how they can be able then to distribute it to their farms using solar pumps. So that, I think, is a low-hanging fruit. By the time you go to an anaerobic digester and all that, much as there is technology around smaller biogas units, but mostly the farmers would be using this in terms of maybe clean energy for cooking. You produce your own gas. You have one cow, you need a bucket a day, put in these systems that are out there now. You put every day, you get your kitchen powered, all that. But in terms of now, irrigation, then solar is one of the areas that we really want to empower our farmers. So in both transferring the knowledge and the technologies, there is also looking at how do you get the funds and how do you utilize the kind of digital sort of technology that is there that people are now moving towards. And I do appreciate that somebody spoke about extension services. So you find many farmers, sometimes they are not able to access that person who comes to tell you this is how your soil is, this is how moist it is, this is the nutrient you need. But we are starting to see apps that are there now, that they are being used by farmers to say, maybe this app based on this region is able to tell me how the soil is able to tell me pests and all those things. So in those kind of projects, we partner with our customers and our own investments to make sure that farmers are aware and they have the access to some of this technology. And you look at what is the lowest hanging fruit for that particular farmer, where they could use solar, they use solar. In terms of wind, again, hoping that we'll get better technology instead of the big turbines and all that, being able to see how does this develop. So keeping the farmer in the conversations around climate change, adaptation, and just ESG in general.
Thank you. It is just after 1:30. If you'd allow for one round of questions and then we will finish. Is that okay? Thank
you. Jane, I mean, for concurrence, now the meeting is ours. So lunch was supposed to, thank you, Jane, for that announcement, at 1:30. And if you don't want to really do what you didn't want, if you say one round, we agree all of us, that would be like 15, 10 minutes, then we go for lunch. Is it okay? It's good to get a confirmation from the members now, because knowing that also some people missed the breakfast, we want to be very careful with this lunch. So therefore we continue, Jane, in that momentum. I think the next round will continue now in confirmation from the members.
Okay, as Peter gives us 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me there is a question that was raised about attractiveness of the financial sector to the agriculture, and maybe I would want to attempt to make a quick comment on that. I said I work with the Kenya Coffee Producers Association, and we want to change the kind of narrative that has always been there, and we want to give it a farmer's approach, where we want to use data and integrate all the information within maybe one database. How are we going to achieve that is probably we must be able to tap into all our membership. All our membership, we shall be able to have key or rather unique identifiers, such that when somebody is trading within our platform or is within our platform, any information will be domiciled there. We will be able to be compliant with all the government regulations to ensure that if a farmer, for example, in coffee, borrows some money from a particular financial institution, that data and information is captured. So if you attempt to go and borrow, then we are making sure that anybody who is going to borrow money outside that particular space, then we are not accountable. But if a farmer has borrowed money within our framework, then any other financial institution that intends to support that particular farmer must seek first the information about that particular farmer, so that at the end of the day, we have the integrity in our financial system, so that we can be able to caution the farmer in terms of the skyrocketing interest rates. Again, the key component in every radar is they look at how well is the repayment going to be assured or assured. So when we are in that particular space or the framework, it is assured because we know whether how this coffee is going to be sold, under which platform, and how money is going to be received. At the end of the day, we will end up attracting more financial institutions who will even be ready to provide farmers with credit that are not, I would not want to say cheap, but at reasonable interest rates, because again, we have to look at what the economy is doing. Thank you.
Okay, to the floor, please keep your questions short.
Yes, hello. My name is Mogai Karaoke, Henry Mogai. I'm a fellow researcher, and my question goes to Mr. Tim, actually. I am also a youth in agriculture, actually. And my question is, well, in the research department, you will find that most of the people who are there are actually, our elders maybe, and the youth, and how things have gone technological. They are really trying to maybe indulge themselves in agriculture, and mostly in the research department, as I am. But right now, as it is, as much as they are trying, maybe there aren't many that are, leeways or maybe roads in which maybe they can collaborate with maybe the governments, other fellow research institutions, and maybe, other collaborations and partners. Or maybe when they try to, maybe they are somehow shunned down. So how do you think maybe we can go with that or go around that? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Hilary Omondi from Siaya. We are talking sustainable agriculture, and I've listened to the conversations. A lot is rotating around science. What is the position of indigenous knowledge, especially with regards to the local solutions that we have in the community in promoting sustainable agriculture? And I'm also a scientist. I'm not disputing science. But do you think science, to some extent, has affected sustainable agriculture in our country? And my last issue is, from your own observations, where are we as a country in promoting sustainable agriculture? Thank you.
Hi, and thank you panelists for the presentation. My name is Miriam Kinyua from University of Eldoret. As we have keenly listened, as I have keenly listened, apart from team, the other three feel like we have reached. This is what is there and it's good. So my question is, have you felt that there is that gap that needs to be studied, that needs to be looked into so that you can optimize the systems? Purity tried, but it didn't come out as if she's feeling that 2 megawatts could be better and that it could be more cost effective. The theme of this meeting is about sustainability, competitiveness, and profitability. My question would be to the other three, that do you look at what you have and feel about how far better we can go towards sustainability so that tomorrow it can go on, and profitability and competitiveness, that it is competitive out there. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Joseph Itimana from the University of Kabianga in Kericho. I'm the Dean of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources. My question is to the panelist who has hinted at structuring coordination of partners. We know there are various actors in agriculture, and sometimes the farmer is getting conflicting actors' interventions, and this coordination is very key. Which strategies do you propose to have this structuring? We know that universities across Kenya, we have quite a number of them having agricultural courses, and we have research institutions around. Is there a way of forming clusters probably so that actors meet somewhere and regionally and have some coordinated efforts? Thank you.
One final one from, I think her hand has been up for a while.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for your intervention and team. And my question goes to you. My name is Lydia Kimani. I'm with Agribusiness for African Markets, and I also serve as an ASNET Council member. Daktari, you indicated that we have not been receiving the 2% allocation as prescribed by the Science, Technology and Innovations Act of 2013. And Emmanuel talked about the need for governance structures, especially to enhance coordination. So seeing that ASNET is a premier organization that is coordinating the private sector, do you feel that it could also be the right platform to push for the 2% allocation for GDP, and especially given the fact that you have already tested the impact of research on driving private sector and market access linkages? Do you feel that ASNET could be one of the platforms that you champion that, and especially now that the CS has committed to the monthly roundtables? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So we shall answer the questions. I'll give everybody also a minute to give us a final comment. Yeah, we'll start with Emmanuel.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start with the interesting question whether science is also contributing to some of the sustainability challenges. The definition of science, when I have been in advocacy spaces, the definition of science is highly debated, and who is a scientist and who is not. And it's a question of power and influence. If I appear with Dr. Tim here on a panel and he is doctor and I am not, it's a question of power and influence. So it is how we define science and how we use science. Sometimes science has been used to dispute farmer knowledge, to dispute experiences of farmers, to dispute consumer demands because they say scientists have said. So I think it's a question of where it's applicable. But I think science in general, as you look at knowledge and information and data, I think we can use that to really guide us in shaping our sustainability agenda. But we have to agree as actors on how we use science and when we use science. Are we using it to block others from participating in the conversation, or are we using it to bring others on board? And the space for farmer knowledge is critical, and when I talk about coordination mechanisms and when I talk about extension, I look at this structure also as structures that bring that farmer knowledge to the forefront, because farmers have a lot of knowledge and experiences, and they are also really the people who experiment in a lot of the research that is produced by scientists. And here I use it also carefully because it can be very political who is a scientist in this country. How do we address the gaps in the structures? Let me just focus myself to this question on coordination, addressing a lot of conflicting issues, conflicting information. As you have seen in social media in the past 3 weeks, there has been a lot of information about bills and proposals and what the government wants to do to smallholder farmers and this and that. And that is exactly the experience that farmers are getting each and every day. I come today, I talk about regenerative agriculture, someone comes after me and talks about agroecology, and another person comes and talk about ESG. And so we have to come up with a mechanism that helps us to communicate to farmers better, or to communicate to actors better, including consumers, bringing them into the conversation. So I think it is true that there is conflicting information, there is conflicting interests in the sector that are not, I don't want to say, we can never agree, all of us. Even sitting in this panel, we can bring a topic that maybe we will not agree. But we need to put aside the different philosophical debates and focus on what is important, what is key for the sector, so that civil society, private sector, government, and everyone can work towards something that is a common agenda, so that even if we don't agree on some certain aspects of production, we can agree on the basics of where we want to go. And I think that is needed. And that leadership, I believe, if Waziri is still here in the room, that leadership has to come from the government. The government has to lead, but I'm not talking about a government-led structure only. I'm looking at a more governance structure that brings all the actors together. So, and to the question of whether there is a gap, yes, there is a gap. And that's why I center myself really on the question of how do we coordinate so that we bring these sustainability innovations and ideas and needs together to work towards bigger impact for sustainability. We cannot achieve sustainability by working in silos. As we know, it is not sustainable to work in silos. We have to use resources efficiently. We have to use knowledge and information that is available efficiently to drive our agenda, and that will only happen if we have a clear, effective coordination structure. And what kind of structure? That was the question. I believe that a revamped ATO, Agriculture Transformation Office, can really serve that purpose, but it has to be revamped. Someone talked about functions, looking at the functions, and to me, the form of the structure should follow the functions. What functions do we want such a coordination structure to deliver? I think ASNET having monthly meetings with the CS is progressive, but as we know, there are other actors that would be outside the ASNET structure, for example, civil society. How do you bring them on board? And that's why we need a broader structure that is more sustainable, that is more, because coordination is an ongoing thing, it's not a one-off thing.
So thank you so much for your questions. I think let me start in the order in which they were asked. I totally agree with you that we have to be intentional in the youthful researchers and help them gain experience. That is how personally I gained experience, by being exposed to work with other senior colleagues and being able to learn of them. But I think the same way we've been reporting on like women in agriculture, maybe it's something we need to consider, that we also need to report about youth especially within our forums, so that we can intentionally create space for them to be able to participate and learn and gain exposure. I think on indigenous knowledge, I couldn't agree with you more. I think for me, my best time when I'm doing research is when I'm doing field work, because I get to learn a lot from farmers. I think the only problem has been the way we document it, and I think we need to be intentional to kind of document those indigenous knowledge and practices that are within the farmers, and how they actually are helping the farmers in terms of resilience, in terms of dealing with shocks and raising productivity, so that we do not look like we are bringing something different or foreign to replace what they have, but basically build on what they have. So I think that could be easily, by us as researchers, being intentional in how we are documenting that, so that we clearly show that farmers are not doing anything, but we're actually building on farmers' practices. I think to the question on coordination, we do have, I think, a number of forums, and I think the honors is university management to work together to tap in these forums, where we, both academia can come together and engage also with the different, it's ASNET, whether it's the county governments or the national government, but it's more of, I think, academia working together, intentionally trying to bring together what they have and using that as a common voice, as opposed to the current practice where each university sees itself as a standalone and tries to work together independently of each other. So I think as Emmanuel has said, there's actually a benefit of us being intentional in how we coordinate that. And I think on the role of ASNET, I think I do see two key roles, especially that ASNET can do in that roundtable. I think one, ASNET can help in terms of informing the research priorities. So right now, our government is funding, we are not funding actually, we shouldn't lie ourselves that we are funding research. We are not funding research. Most of the research that is being done in the country is being done by the gracious help of our development partners. If our development partners, if today CJR, NSF or what goes from the ministry to CALRO is just not comparable. But then we can, I think ASNET can lobby for what the research agenda can be. And we do have niche areas where ASNET can actually lead research, because probably it's not as expensive. And generating that knowledge, ASNET can also help in terms of advocacy, because I think ASNET has a very
continuous improvement. We make sure that as the climate is changing, you identify where are the threats, where are the opportunities. So if you have, of course, because the biggest threat from where I see it is, or to any farmer right now, is the changing climate and the rising cost of doing, of farming, of production. We are looking at input costs, and that's where we were saying, when you come to looking at compost and some of these biofertilizers, then you're looking at cost reduction. When you look at using solar, you will go to a farm of mine, one of our farms, they'll tell you our bill for electricity used to be 8 million every single month. Now it's 0 because I'm using this AD plant. Another one will tell you mine has reduced, I'm saving $1 million shillings here because of solar on a large scale. But I, as a small scale farmer, how much would I be able to say I'm not going to spend on buying diesel because I'm using solar, or I have been able to harvest water? In areas that have traditionally relied on rain, the rain-fed agriculture, they are starting to see now variations in the rainfall amounts and also the frequency. So farmers are beginning to think, if VegPro has got this huge 200,000 cubic dam with a dam liner, maybe my dam liner will be on a smaller one, but I'm able to dig up and have my dam liner and put some water, or we can get together as a community. So when we talked about things like value addition, how we are selling our mangoes is prepared mango. So yes, it is not easy because the yield you get out of that mango is low, but you are able to sell a mango that is already peeled and sliced and just ready to eat. So the whole issue of pest transported with the mango is not there. So you are able to be competitive in the market. You are able to supply all year round. You are able to add value to what you are supplying. When we are talking about utilization of our products. We were talking about how much money do we save by not throwing out this produce that we have received because we are calling it reject. And that reject is not because the food is not safe for consumption, it's because it does not meet a certain specification of length of this or that. So looking at how do you utilize it in different ways. So we really, really reduce that waste. Obviously, you do get to make your savings, and that can boost you in terms of high cost of inputs and all that. So I think as I close, it's about the sustainability of the farmer is about resilience. It's about resilience. There is the people who are not able to adapt and be resilient are not going to survive when the rain did not come on the time they expected the rain to come. When the produce that came did not meet specification because of high temperatures, which are rising. And because of that high temperature, my fruit was smaller, my bean was shorter. So how do you utilize that product? And for us, I think linking farmers to market so that if a farmer is not able to put up a high care facility to produce ready to eat stir fry, then I can be able to partner with that outgrower. They can bring in their produce and we can be able to move it to market. So I think it's all about resilience. It's about adding value and being competitive still in the market, because the prices of the end product are not rising, but the cost of inputs are keeping on rising. So right from the investment of what planting material am I using, what technologies of irrigation am I using, or spray, or all that, how am I using net covering as opposed to spraying a product, or like the baby spinach and all that, helps me to be able to say I'm going to save money but also save the environment and reduce the use of import. So I hope that gives it a little bit of a stretch, and thank you for the challenge. I know sometimes with limited time we don't have the interaction to really push it as far as it should go, and I think it's a challenge to all of us to keep on asking ourselves what are more practical solutions that can be offered to make sure the farmer is sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. For us, for the sustainability and competitiveness, our approach is everything that we do must be geared to the market. So it has to be market driven, but farmer initiated. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to add about diversification because it's very important. VegPro was started in 1979. We have been working with farmers, but even us as a company, we have seen that you cannot be growing beans for 50 years and just stay with beans. So you find people bringing in new crops. So I think it's a challenge. We have seen avocado really being picked up by many of the farmers. That don't be that farmer that will always do beans because green beans were working. It is about looking at now maybe how is the market opening up for avocado, which is really picking up well despite a few challenges, but it is being able to diversify and meet the requirement that is there today. Beans are going to face a lot of hurdles around whether it's carbon emissions, whether it is producers who are nearer the market, so they are not air freighting the beans, but we do have other opportunities with other crops.
I want to thank my panelists. I apologize for taking a bit of your time. ASNET is open to all, including CSOs. In fact, my organization plays that role as a CSO. We should all strive to be sustainable in everything that we do, and I hope we have given a few insights on how that can happen and how to get people thinking sustainability. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to give them a round of applause, and even a better one. You know, it was quite intensive. If you listen to the discussions, they were quite rich. Thank you, Jane, also for organizing the team well. And that was a very good presentation. I think it is a bar set to others, yeah? So we hope that the others will do even better. And I think this is really something. Okay, we have definitely gone beyond time, and I could see people want to ask more questions, but somehow we have to follow our program a bit, not to the point, but we have to go for lunch, isn't it? Otherwise, we can go on and on. It's very interesting topics. So I want to invite you now for lunch. I would like to have these ladies, Gladys, please come. Because we don't want to assume that everybody knows this KICC. So some people are still getting lost, yeah? So where I'm going to direct you for lunch, I hope everybody has this meal voucher. If you don't have, please show by your hand. If you don't have, you see, there are still people who don't have. And we want to avoid now people getting frustrated there again. So are they finished? All they are? So you'll take care of that, eh? There's a group here and some others. Yeah, here. Yes. So now what I'm announcing, and thank you, I think we're going to clap for ourselves for the morning session. Yeah, the opening with our guests and the key points. I see people referring to what was said in the morning, and I know tomorrow evening we shall be putting this action point with content, because we say everybody is saying actionable, something that can be traced. As a moderator, I want to invite you now. I'm told it is called Tin Tin. Tin Tin is T-I-N, restaurant. But luckily enough, you can see the way the ushers are dressed. They'll guide us a bit in case you don't know the place. And I hear it is ground floor, first of all, and walk straight. I don't know now, ground floor, walk straight. That's why we need them, so that we don't go up. I saw some people looking for exit up, which is also not good. It's a bit frustrating. And then we agree together in this summit how we redeem time. You know, we have like an hour, 30 minutes like this lost. I know there's one presentation by Kenneth that will not come because Dr. Mairoda will not come. And therefore we say we can borrow some time there. Magdalene will make a statement on behalf of Kenneth. But because I don't want to take